They say if you see her, it's already too late. I grew up in a small town in Vermont, the kind of place where everyone knows each other and secrets don't stay buried for long. In my mid-20s, I moved back after spending a few years aimlessly drifting from one city to another. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but something about home felt like it held the answers. My mother had always been religious, and since I was back in town, I decided to start going to church with her on Sundays. It wasn't necessarily about faith for me, just liked the structure, the familiarity. The church itself was old, built in the early 1800s, with tall, narrow windows and creaky wooden pews that seemed to whisper when you sat down. One Sunday, I noticed a girl sitting alone in one of the back rows. I hadn't seen her before, which was odd because new faces weren't common around here. She had long black hair, pale skin, and eyes that seemed just a little too dark. Something about her presence made the air feel colder. After the service, I introduced myself. Her name was Lillian. She spoke softly, barely above a whisper, and when she smiled, it never quite reached her eyes. I asked if she had just moved to town. She hesitated before answering, then said she was staying with family. I asked who, but she just smiled again and said, "You probably wouldn't know them." Over the next few weeks, I saw her at church every Sunday, always sitting in the same pew, always alone. We started talking more, and I learned little things about her. She liked old books, had a strange fascination with folklore, and never seemed to have a phone. One day, I finally asked if she wanted to go out for coffee. She nodded, almost too eagerly, and said yes. That night, we met at a small diner on the edge of town. The moment she walked in, the waitress, an older woman who had been working there for decades, went pale. I caught her staring at Lillian, gripping the counter so hard her knuckles turned white. When I asked if she was okay, she just muttered, "Be careful." Lillian didn't seem to notice. She was in a good mood that night, laughing more than usual. But something about her laughter sent a chill down my spine. It felt hollow, forced. The more we talked, the more I realized she never gave straight answers about herself. Any question about her past was met with vague responses or outright deflection. After that night, strange things started happening. My bedroom door would be open in the morning when I was sure I had closed it before bed. I started having vivid nightmares, dark forests, whispering voices, a woman's silhouette standing at the foot of my bed. I would wake up drenched in sweat, gasping for air. One night, I woke up to a soft tapping on my window. My room was on the second floor. When I gathered the courage to look, I saw Lillian standing in the yard, staring up at me. She wasn't smiling this time. She just stood there, her head tilted slightly, like she was studying me. My body locked up in fear. I wanted to move, to run, but I couldn't. And then, without a word, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the tree line. The next morning, I went to church, hoping to see her and demand some kind of explanation. But she wasn't there. I asked around, but no one seemed to know who I was talking about. When I described her, the priest's face went pale. He pulled me aside and, in a hushed tone, told me that Lillian Reynolds had been dead for nearly 30 years. She had lived in town once, long ago, and was known for sitting alone in the back pew every Sunday. But one night, she vanished without a trace. Some said she ran away, others whispered about something much darker. But one thing was certain: she was never seen again, until now.